What if miHoYo decided to buff every single elemental resonance in the game? In this video, we're going to go over one idea for each type of elemental resonance and how we can try to make them better, make each elemental resonance a little bit more interesting and viable, perhaps for the elements you'd like to choose. The first elemental resonance we're going to be going over is Protective Canopy. So the current bonus is that each member of the party gets plus 15 to elemental res and physical res, which overall is not very interesting. So I thought, well, this is a game about elemental reactions, and I should actually benefit for having different types in my party. So my thought is we should incentivize players to use rainbow element teams instead of picking double elements like the majority players tend to pick Fervent Flames for the attack bonus. So why not give unique elements elemental mastery? So pick a number between, I guess, 25 to 100, and in between there, give all characters that amount of elemental mastery to incentivize additionally using your elemental reactions for the bonuses that your reactions give you. I think that overall that will be a very good change for Protective Canopy, because I don't think it's a very good option to be using, really. Moving on to Fervent Flames, you are originally affected by cryo 40% less time, and all party members' attack is increased by 25%. This is a pretty good buff, but let's see if we can spice it up a little bit more. The buffs to Fervent Flames that I thought of is an increase of resistance to interruption. I, for one, wish that more of increased resistance to interruption was in the game, because I really hate when I'm trying to do combos and then I just get hit out of it. Specifically, charge attack Claymore users pretty much can't function, because anytime you try to use a charge attack, you can be hit out of it pretty quickly. And for example, Beto has that part of her kit when if you have your counter successfully, activate, she has a ridiculously fast increased attack speed, and you can just get tapped out of it, and then it doesn't really matter. Moving on to the elemental resonance of Soothing Water. You are affected by pyro for 40% less of the time, and your incoming healing is increased by 30%. For having 2 Hydra units on a team to achieve this resonance, honestly, I don't ever want to have 2 Hydro characters on my team, because that resonance is just so pathetic. You don't really need healing that much, and 30% healing, you can pretty much have that just by having your healer do better healing based off of whatever scaling they have, or just upgrade their talents. Like, you don't need that resonance at all. Being affected by pyro 40% less of the time is fine, but instead, let's tack on an increased energy recharge by, say, 10 to 15%, and overall that would be a much better buff to the Hydro elemental resonance. Moving on to Impetuous Winds. We currently have a decreased stamina consumption by 15%. I think that's fine. An increased movement speed by 10%, and a skill cooldown shortened by 5%. That's actually pretty good overall for double wind, but let's see if we can make it a little bit better. So what I thought of, just pretty much buffing what we already have, where we have an increased movement speed to 15% instead of 10, but with a new ability of an increased attack speed percentage, which finding attack speed percent is very difficult, because like very few characters actually give an increased attack percent. Jean's Constellation 2 and Song of Broken Pines are the 2 things that I know of that I can see most of the time that increase attack percent. And I know Beto's, again, her ability just does it for herself, but talking about the whole team attack speed percent increase. I think that would be a pretty good start for the Animo elemental resonance. Moving on to high voltage. We all know that Electro doesn't have the greatest of help, right? So high voltage, we are currently affected by Hydro 40% less of the time, Superconduct, Overload, and Electro Charge to have 100% chance to generate an Electro Elemental Particle with a cooldown of 5 seconds. My idea to help fix high voltage is that when enemy is affected by electro, their elemental resistance is going to be reduced by X amount for X amount of seconds, so say 5 to 10 seconds if they are affected by electro, or until, maybe the electro element is removed or a successful elemental reaction has been produced. Moving on to Shattering Ice. We currently are affected by electro for 40% less of the time, and we have an increased crit rate against opponents that are frozen or affected by cryo by 15%. This one's already really good, so I had to give it something. So this one might not be as good as some of the other changes, but I thought of increased enemies take increased physical damage while they are affected by cryo. That is still pretty good, but not many characters are physical anyway. And shadow damage will be further increased on frozen enemies because it just goes with the name Shattering Ice. So I was like, well, let's go with that. Lastly, we have Enduring Rock. So the Geo element has already received a buff before, but now since we're buffing all of them, we gotta give it a little bit something as well. So we currently have an increased shield strength of 50%. Additionally, characters protected by a shield will have the following special characteristics. Damage dealt is increased by 15%. Dealing damage to enemies will decrease their geo resistance by 20% for 15 seconds. So the change that I thought to give the elemental resonance for Enduring Rock is when you gain a shield, it has a chance to remove the affected element. The cooldown of, let's say, 10 seconds or so. Every other elemental resonance besides the animal resonance has a kind of effect that you are affected by a certain or specific type of other element by 40% less of the time. So by giving Geo the opportunity to also have an effect that reduces or even completely takes away the effect of an element on your character could be beneficial for in-game content if we get a little bit more stuff down the line. And if you do think that miHoYo might not go back and buff elemental resonances, like I said with the Geo resonance, we have seen them go back and look to give it some works and changes before, so we can always speculate and hope that some sort of change will show up in the future for elemental resonances that need a little bit more help, specifically the Hydro resonance and the Electro resonance to start. Maybe we'll get an update to these resonances when the Dendro resonance does end up coming out with Sumeru, but again, we can only hope for that much. Additionally, with having 4 different types of elemental types, it is really terrible to only have resistance on your character when this is a game about elemental reactions, and having one of each different type of character doesn't really net you anything cool. That's going to be it for me in this one. Hope you enjoyed watching. See you in the next video, and if you have any thoughts of your own elemental resonance changes, be sure to leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next time.
またお会いしましたね。